Well, if you're a Christian, you will probably get excited about this uh, stone that was found, this amulet that was found in 1904 in Italy, where it depicts what you would think will be Jesus on the cross. But unfortunately, this is not Jesus on the cross. This is the Orpheus amulet, which you will find in today in the Kaiser Frederick Museum in Germany. Was found in 1904, was in a private collector's hands until the 1960s, and is currently, like I said, in the Kaiser Frederick Museum. But although there is absolutely nothing that would indicate that it is a forgery, it is not being evaluated anymore, or not available for evaluation anymore to determine the time frame that it was created. One of the reasons why that will be important is to be able to determine whether or not it's a forgery or not. But most scholars do not believe that it is a forgery at all, which then would create deeper implications of the Jesus story, having parts of it brought to the Gospels from the story of Orpheus. And most of you have probably never heard of Orpheus, but Orpheus is very important in the Greek mythologies. Orpheus, in the description here, Orpheus is related to becoming Dionysus or Bacchus, as it would have been called in the Roman time frames, Orpheus to Bacchus. But Dionysus is the name of the Greek name, is the Greek name. Some thought that it might have been a forgery because it shows a man on a cross who's tied to a cross instead of nailed to a cross, and that his feet are on a footrest, which Jesus being portrayed on a footrest was something that didn't come about until the 13th, 15th century. Prior to the 13th, 15th century, and back in the 5th century, 3rd and 5th century, he was not depicted in such manners as far as being tied to a cross or having a footrest. He was oftentimes nailed to the cross in the 4th and 5th century. But then we got the stars and we got a crescent moon at the top. This is definitely Orpheus. The story of Orpheus and the similarities that it would have to the Jesus story is Orpheus, who was either had his own mysteries, the Orphic mysteries, that were dedicated to the worship of Dionysus, and was a traveling preacher. This traveling preacher was oftentimes displayed to be a shepherd, a good shepherd, and would sing so sweetly because he was like a man who had abilities in music and medicine and writing. And these types of attributes can also be alluded to the Jesus story, as even when the rocks were thrown at him, the music was so sweet that the rocks would dare not hit him, but would pretty much sit and listen to him. If you will not speak of God's greatness, these stones will cry out. So the stories of Orpheus also goes into the idea of overcoming your sins and then dying, or at least going into Hades and returning, a somewhat of a resurrection. Because in the story of Orpheus, his wife dies untimely death. Eurydice is what I believe is her name. And he goes down into Hades to try to rescue his wife. But the music and his singing is so sweet that even Hades can't resist. And so even though he didn't return back with his wife, he still returned back on earth alive, somewhat of a resurrection. Uh, Orpheus didn't die in this manner, which is very interesting because Orpheus was in the story, especially by Strabo, was ripped to shreds by women and torn apart. Body, body, limbs, head, and his head actually floated down the river, still singing. So there are some differences in the death, of course, and there are many other differences in the story. But some of the key points of the Orpheus story are very much similar that you have in Christianity, similar to the degree that Clement of Alexander literally wrote that that Jesus is the newer and better Orpheus, and that in the Roman catacombs you will see many different amulets or inscriptions, rather, not amulets, but inscriptions that are dedicated to Orpheus in well-known Christian catacombs and tombs, because even in Judaism as well as Christianity, Orpheus was relatable to the Jesus story. Orpheus is also relatable to the David story in his ability to sing, and David was a singer. He sings, he played the lyre, and all these sorts of things, the same thing that Orpheus did. So the Orpheus story, which dates back to about the 6th century BCE, and has been retold and rehashed and refurbished and changed a bit depending upon the writer, has been a constant Mediterranean deity of greatness. He has inhibited the goodwill of Apollo, the god of the sun. He has got the goodwill of Zeus, of Demeter, of Dionysus, of pretty much all the pantheons of the Greek gods. All thought that Orpheus was this great man on the planet Earth and was pretty much somewhat giving a saving message to mankind. And in his mysteries, it is through the purification of the body and the mind and the soul that a person will be able to sanctify themselves to be able to be with the gods on Mount Olympus. So there are some similarities between Orpheus and the Christian story. And it's very well, since it was a Mediterranean story, could have been part of where they got aspects of the Jesus story. So more information should be researched. I implore you guys to go and research this information for yourself, and you will see the same stuff that I saw. Definitely read some of the PhD papers that I read on Google Scholar, and you will be able to find out a bunch of different things. Not Google, well, you can find some stuff on Google, but Google Scholar is my primary, and Academia EDU. So y'all have a great day, and always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.